Noella could not control her emotions. It was as if she was on the verge of a breakdown. The pain from all these days was released through her tears. Neither of them said anything. There was only the sound of light and inconsistent breathing. After some time, the man's hoarse and cold voice said, "If you're not going to say anything, I'm hanging up." In the past, he couldn't stand to see her cry. But if tears fell, his heart would soften. But this time, her tears had no effect on him. Noella sniffled. Her heart seemed to be squeezed by an invisible hand, making her unable to breathe. "Peter, do you not want me anymore?" She had never thought that she would act so pathetic and foolish in front of him. But who could she blame? She had not cherished their relationship when they had been together, and she had not trusted him when they faced problems. She was always thinking too much and had made too many decisions by herself. If it was her, she would be annoyed too. How could he continue to tolerate her constantly breaking up with him? After Noella asked this, the man on the other end was silent for a while. Just when she thought that he would not answer her, she heard his cold and slightly sarcastic voice. "Noella, weren't you the one who gave up on us?" She lowered her eyes. She bit her lip hard and said in a soft voice, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have broken up with you. Can I have another chance?" Silence. "I don't want you to sleep with Gianna. I used to think that letting go of you would be best for both of us, but I just can't do it. I can't. It's impossible for me to forget my feelings for you. Peter, can you please forgive me one more time?" There was a dead silence. Noella's heart sank. Because she had let go first, he had no desire to be with her anymore. It was too late. Noella did not want to make the situation worse, so she said, with her voice choked, "If you feel that you can't forgive me, then forget I said anything. I'll go back to Michaeltown tomorrow and I won't bother you anymore." Before she could finish, the man's deep and cold voice said, "Turn around." Noella's wet eyelashes blinked and she let out a puzzled, "Huh?" "Turn around." Noella stood up and turned her head around. The man, whom she thought was in the hotel room, was standing on the other side of the fountain with one hand in his pocket and the other holding his phone. He was looking at her with eyes that were as bright as stars in a dark sky. The light from the street lamp fell on him. It was dim and there were no shadows around, so she could not see clearly. Not quite trusting her eyes, Noella closed them, then opened them again. His tall and cold figure was still standing there, and his dark eyes were staring at her. Noella's heart jumped. So he had not gone to the room to sleep with Gianna? Hanging up the phone, she rushed towards Peter. But she had crouched too long just now, and her left leg was asleep, so she tripped and fell into the fountain. The water in the fountain was deep, and she was thoroughly soaked. She had flailed about before her head finally came up out of the water. Even though she was in such a disheveled state, the corners of her mouth curved up into a smile. Peter ran towards Noella the moment he saw her fall into the fountain. He was worried that she was hurt, but the foolish woman was actually smiling. Even though Noella knew that she looked silly, she could not control her happiness. Looking at Peter, who was now standing by the fountain, Noella wiped the water off her face. "Peter, aren't you going to pull me out?" "You got yourself into this mess, and you want me to pull you up?" His face was expressionless. Noella scoffed in her heart. Forget it. Seeing that he had not gone to the room with Gianna, she would overlook this. Noella climbed out from the fountain herself. She was completely soaked, and her ankle hurt a little. She must have sprained it when she fell in. Noella looked at the icy cold man as she limped up to him. "Peter, I hurt my foot." "You asked for it." Lowering her eyes, Noella pulled pitifully at his sleeve. "I know that I was wrong. I'll trust you from now on, tell you everything, and not hide anything from you ever again, okay?" Noella was stubborn and proud. In the past, even when she was wrong, she would seldom admit her mistakes. let alone be so apologetic. Although Peter's face didn't show it, his heart had softened. This woman was his soft spot. Noella's expression turned gloomy, and she lowered her eyes when she saw that Peter was silent, the outline of his face sharp and cold. "You might need time to think about it. I won't rush you. I'll go back to my hotel now." She turned to leave. But she had only taken 2 steps when Peter grabbed her wrist. Noella looked down at the man's hand that was holding her wrist. His fingers tightened slowly, and the warmth from his palm felt amazing. Just as Noella was about to say something, the man's hand yanked her gently towards him. She fell into the man's firm and broad chest. Suddenly her body was suspended in the air as he lifted her up. Noella put her hands on his shoulders and looked at his handsome face, her heart skipping a beat. "Peter, remember what you said. There won't be another time." Noella understood what he meant. If she mentioned breaking up again, he would never forgive her. She learned her lesson, and no matter what problems they'd have in the future, she would not ever want to separate from him again. After breaking up and seeing how cold and distant he was to her, her heart had been broken into pieces. Peter carried Noella towards the clubhouse. He looked down at the woman in his arms and saw that tears had welled up in her eyes. She looked like she was about to cry. "What's wrong? Does your foot hurt?" Noella shook her head. "Then why are you crying?" "I'm just happy because I got back something I thought I had lost." Peter ignored her and carried her to the door of his hotel room above the clubhouse. "The room card is in my pocket." Noella said, "Put me down. My foot doesn't hurt that much anymore." Pretending to not have heard her, he simply said, "Do you want me to keep standing outside with you in my arms?"